Carla, welcome to Berlin. You just moved here from Paris. How are you experiencing Berlin right now? It's on.
Oh, it's on. Hello, everyone, again. Before, I was very in a rush. I was not expecting speaking, so I was quite empty mind, and want to say thank you to the team from Photographiska. It's been a very nice experience to put that together, because as you all know, that Photographiska have very strong photograph interest. So when they ask me, I would say, that's not really my main medium. Like, I'm more into like time-based work, and then when we decide to show these things, and I think it's also interesting to get in a topic of how actually images or photographs being developed, and also my big interest of contemporary time, how technology involving of art making process. So I always think, as an artist, it's fun to push what is not there. I used to take a lot of pictures. I used to paint, and then I completely feel it was limited, and then I start using computer to do art, and that kind of gave me some kind of surprise or subconscious that's not for me, and I found that very fascinating. And from a picture that is produced to be a final product, and I think now I'm more into the making of process, or image actually is still in progress, thanks to technology that can actually expand many possibilities. So I'm glad that, if you see a video work or like something very non-photograph based in Photographiska, it's not because it's not photograph, it's because we are expanding something more than a medium, but an idea about making images, idea of making art, and what image mean to our culture and contemporary time. Yeah, I think that is the beginning of our, collaboration.
Yes, photography definitely does have a very broad definition in Photographiska, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And when we look at your beginning as an artist, you did start with photography or video as a starting point. And one work that I'm reminded of, or one story, is of when you were in Sweden long ago. And I'll put it on the screen so everyone can see the photographic works. Could you tell us a little about this?
Yeah. If I can share a little bit of my background, because I think that also tell a lot, like how my whole role become what I'm doing. I grew up in Hong Kong. I think a lot of people know that it's a very constrained in terms of spatial experience. I live in, relatively small space, always condensed. There's not much like, green nature as we expect. And I have a very interesting relationship with nature. Like, I don't like anything green. I don't like anything that kind of muddy. Like, I always just want to stay in concrete, and, that made me comfy. And then my first time actually being an adult in Europe, and I was actually first time in Sweden and see the first time of snowing. And I was in Lapland, where actually one of the most north part of Sweden, that kind of the most alien land that I ever experienced. And I experienced like absolutely silent, which that was very powerful for someone that come from a busy and noisy city. Like, silent is not exist. It's like when you make a video, that's silent, right? So that was a very big impact in my early, adult life, and I actually start kind of creating that space. And I think this series of picture, it was took in Lapland, and where actually I tried to capture the light, and the movement, because we're constantly in movement. So I was actually quite upset to capture things we don't see with human eyes, but you actually see with technology, like a digital cameras, because they have much higher sensor than eyes, and we can actually capture noise as an artifact that created by the digital, but actually it's somehow there. Mm-hmm. So then I think my journey start more evolving. Okay, not only what you see and what you can do with your hand, but how technology gives you another perspective, and how you involve that in your making process, and they actually give you another perspective. But this is like one of the early series, and I'm still using like a digital camera, like a 5D Mark III at that time for me, Mark II, and I was like obsession just capturing of a wandering world that I was not familiar with, and that's still very fascinating to me.
That's really interesting that you said that you like the city and being surrounded by concrete.
I know all the German will say, what?
I can't disagree more. And I find that really interesting that your first experience of nature was something that just really was formative for your art career, and that it had such a huge effect on your work even to this day. Another work that I think of when you speak about your experience in nature, and I also find it's interesting that so many of Carla's works are about nature, which is exactly the thing that you feel so much emotion about. Maybe that makes sense, but it's not going the easy way. So the other work that comes to mind is a work that you did twice, once in the USA in the Mojave Desert, and a second time in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we can
Just
take a look.
play it like a small.
Take a look at both versions. So this is the first one. It's in the desert in the USA.
I think we can stop. Because that is like 8 hours long. No, so that was actually one of the early student work. I think that's very relevant about what you're gonna see upstairs. I was very interested in capturing, but I always think when you're holding a camera, you're always having a gaze, no matter you try to put out. But I was filming nature, so I was doing this little, devices. At that time, GoPro is still not there yet, so I found this little spy, camera that normally you hide it for spying people, and then put it in a windmill that actually the camera angle changed based on the wind. And then I put that in a Mojave Desert when there's the most wind, and then you can see the 360 scenario that I try to capture, and whatever you see is actually driven by the nature. Like there is no human present in the perspective, and that time I try to, like why I always have the human, absent when I'm filming things, and it was a very, little experimental time that I found actually, quite fun to do at that time. And then what you see is actually like a very long wind capturing as a director, like a nature, filming nature itself. And then you have the mirror, which is also, having the back work and the front work. So that's kind of conceptually showing the surrounding. And then I think that kind of tell a lot, like when you go upstairs to see the work that is hyper, computationally generated. There's nothing kind of like pre-captured images, like all it's just coding and layers of noise contouring each other. That's almost pure random. That how I see nature is, because it just different layers of randomness come together. That's why it's so fascinating, because you cannot really decode it, but you kind of feel that there is certain kind of pattern, like when you see a cloud or wave, you get magnified, and I think there's a very alignment that how I want to challenge capturing thing with a different gate, like no matter it's a technology, no matter it's no human present.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that you think about capturing images without actually being in control.
Yes.
And observing that, and
Yeah.
at the same time you create art that's driven by algorithms.
Yes.
So in both cases you're relying on another nature.
Yeah.
Once it's a digital nature and the other is an organic nature.
Yeah.
And in your work, Black Moves, you investigate this relationship between the way that data exists and the way that nature exists. Can you tell us a little bit about what's behind the pixels? What is actually driving the images that we see? Because to me it looks like actual landscapes, but that's not really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what's interesting in using a lot of technology process, as I say, is that it's certain kind of, surprise you cannot really predict, like a glitch, I think it's something very poetic, because it's a computer design that's showing to you, and And just like when you do an art, that moment of expression, that capture, and that also have this kind of digital construct when you're using a computer doing that. And I've been quite want to recreate this of a topic of nature. That's why I, make a different set of algorithm. Basically, is different kind of library of noise, because as I say, noise, which means randomness for me in that case, is the fundamental how you create nature, because it cannot never be repeated, and that's always a force to join, and then that force change another thing, and that's how nature for me become. And that is approach how I want to, recreate nature, that what I feel in this space, and then we do it this with, a complete new way, like just basically like a coding existing, and of course, I say I like the randomness, I like the the surprise, but for me, a lot of my work also have a lot of control. Because otherwise, when things is just too random, for me, it also doesn't mean like a lot, But I think letting go some kind of like a control that kind of come out is, for me, is also very important about the moment. Especially a lot of people see digital is very like, cold, hard, non-human. But if you understand how computer works or that part of technology is actually a very poetic part of creating a moment that we do not really understand yet. Yeah, but it's actually created by human. Yeah.
And do you attempt to encourage the data to create of its own?
Yes. So basically, what I see upstairs, most of them, the surprise pretty also surprise to me, and that's one kind of it's like for me that I put myself. I always dreaming that I will be floating on the cloud, and then you see all this thing coming to you. Every minute is different, and then I let that setting create that scenery of creating what nature is, and that will be what you're kind of seeing this upstairs.
Thank you. That's really interesting. This is a work of yours that I really, really like, because it's very abstract, but at the same time you can see that it's a landscape, or to me at least it looks like a landscape.
Yeah, I think this was an extension of a period that I was very into technology. So in that sense, I was geeky, because you just need to like know all the software, making artwork. It was not necessarily fun, Like I always say to people, I used to paint, and I miss painting the most is you can get drunk and paint. When I'm doing digital work, I just need to be sober. Sometimes it's not so fun, and then I come in a phase that I miss to touch real thing, and I miss the smell of acetone, oil. And I think for me, doing complete digital work was not giving you that. And then I was actually cross-discipline of more analog and digital hybrid. And this is one of the series that I do is actually, again, a generative algorithm-based nature. But then I actually use a screen print approach to put glue on it and then put pigment on it that you actually have a unique falling part, and to create that kind of human touch of a digital understanding images. So then all the work is almost like a unique, and also kind of having this human look, and that's kind of the one making of, is a digital images, but then actually I was also have this very, live action that I was missing when I was doing arts, and then I was making a series of, how to create images in in an interesting way. At that time that was the phase, and I think you can tell actually Black Moose was one of the earliest work when I land in Europe. It's also very important for me because at that time I was very wow, like I come to Europe, just probably when you go the first time in Asia, like you were surprised of everything culture-wise and spatial-wise. But then things got evolved until like now, recently I also do something very different. But I think, being in Berlin to showing something that was quite substantial for me is very important. And then you can tell this work is actually like a developing a next step, like crossover about, how, like poetic aspect of technology that, is not only like a screen or a projection. There's something about, the calculation computationally interesting, but also can be humanly produced is quite central.
I've noticed that there's a lot of uncertainty or chance plays a big role in your work.
Yes, I think that's the moment that I think is fun in art. You know, like I think no one ever paint a painting and say, oh, this is exactly what I want, and that's how. For me, then we are robots. Yeah. So for me, I think that uncertainty is the beauty moment of creating art.
And in this work, you moved from the digital to the analog.
Yes, that was the first way to try to cross over. So I use a lot of digital picture, and those are the picture actually I took in darkness, so you couldn't really see with your eyes, but you only see with technology, and then using a pigment to reveal what you don't see. So that was my first attempt. Yeah, and that was actually I did my first solo show here in Berlin with a very interesting art space called Smack, and that is how I do that series, yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about the digital and analog worlds? How do you or how does one imagine the difference between producing artwork analog and digital, specifically in terms of?
I think we as an artist, you always reflect what contemporary time happening to you, and I think technology is something we cannot really avoid. And I grow up in a phase of transition with technology. Like I still experience the time without internet, and now we are with online all the time. And I think this transitional was very interesting. Like us, like we're still fascinated about what technology can do to you, but we probably can be imitating, but we still want to hold something that we can touch because that makes us feel comfortable. And I think that is what my art is also finding this balance in between. Like I don't want to go pure digital that I lost sensation, but I feel like just doing like something so traditional, it doesn't have the expansion of what can become next. And that is exactly what I think when digital have an understanding and then meet analog, that could be something quite interesting happening. Or it's just like myself feel, I can satisfy myself with both worlds. Or like when I want to get drunk, I do some pigment. When I want to be sober, I do some coding. So that's a little emotion. Like it's a word that I say. I already did the digital pictures, then I print with glue. And then you just put the pigment on it to reveal things what you don't have. So whatever the glue stick is actually the traces of the moment of reviewing the digital pictures. So instead of just doing a digital print, which actually I've been exploring a lot, there's a lot of pixel, But for me, I just don't see I want to do a print, that doesn't resonate me so much. So then that's why I create this, approach, and I've been trying different printing, by myself. But eventually, I think this is the most, suitable way to express what I actually want to tell.
Since I know you, you've always been experimenting with technology. The last time I visited you in your studio, you had like a huge frame built where you were busy building something, and you tried to explain to me what you were doing.
Yeah.
Could you explain to us what you're currently interested in and what your future projects you imagine they would be like?
Yeah, I mean, also probably a bit about my upbringing, being in Asia, I grew up I born in Shenzhen, but I moved to Hong Kong when I was 3 months, so my parents left maybe because of the reason of Cultural Revolution, so, Hong Kong had a better place at that time. But then now, when I grow up, China changed a lot, and Shenzhen became one of the future cities. So if you've been there, you know that, technology is a major part, and you don't need to even have a wallet. You just walk in a supermarket, everything paid by your facial recognition, and you have a robot giving you dishes. And I also fascinating about the world is like that. And then I actually go back to my root more recently, especially after the pandemic. I actually do more project in China and in Hong Kong, especially in Shenzhen, because they actually one of the hubs of like a Asian Silicon Valley. And then I actually pretty into like a robotic creation, how machine actually making artwork, but then there is a human inception. So if you ask me what's my next project, what's coming now, is like I'm building some robot, and that's still painting. I cannot talk much because it's still in the process. But for me, I quite see that, my studio in the future will be a lot of robotic arm and making the artwork, because I think before artists making the artwork, and then the studio assistant making the artwork, and then next like the robot making the artwork, and I will be the one next to the robot. No, that was just like kind of like a visual imagination. But definitely, I have a deep interest about technology, that what can do to mankind, and in art, and that is what I'm exploring. And I think I'm not super old, so I'm still in this experimental phase of art, and I think that's very fun. So that's why people maybe think like Carla Chan is doing a little bit this, and I think that period is the most fun stage for an artist and important.
Well, thank you very, very much. That was super interesting.
Yeah, and we can have a drink now. So
Before we have a drink, yeah. Wait, I mean, you can already have a drink. Here's one for you. So while you're drinking and having a great time, it would be so nice if somebody from the audience had a question for Carla. I think it would be great to hear another voice. Yes, please.
I'm wondering, as your practice
Yes,
is quite, I'm speak quite loud. As your practice is so inspired by spaces and a lot of your impulses came from that, I'm wondering if place where you live is influencing you or giving you some kind of impulses still, and what were the impulses that Berlin gave you, or how it changed your work?
that's a very good question. Yes, yes, for sure, because I think artists not only, but for me, is taking inspiration every day from where you live, where you encounter. And Berlin is such an important city for me because I live here over 8 years. After being in Sweden, I moved to Berlin. And I would never think I live in Germany. But Berlin have a very special, in terms of space, it's not like the size, but like the mindset, like you have a lot of mixed, ideas of free, and coming from Hong Kong is quite capitalistic, that if you have no money, you cannot make anything. And I remember the first 3 years, I didn't pay rent. The landlord just kept my art, and I think, wow, like how amazing! I can just exchange my art with rent, and that's Berlin. And for me, that kind of space, it's giving you a space to do artwork, and that's super important. But also give the space for you can actually have a very different thinking, and for sure that is a big influence. Like without Berlin and Pop, I will never do very big pieces of installation, because this work originally was 21 meter and in a dome version, so you really literally floating on the video. And I would never think about that in Hong Kong. People just do small work because we have no space. And that case, it's because of Berlin, but then culture-wise, you can also hear the sound was very important with my video work. Unfortunately, I'm not very talented, so I have a very talented artist who make this with me. And when I told them I want to create a sound that basically sounds silent, that is the moment that what I mentioned. And he just got it. It's like this hum that we are here not used to it, but then that that's some sound, but actually there's no sound. And I meet people like that, and that also feel like it's very important in my work. I think the club scene was very important to my work, and we all love that. And I think yes, for sure. I think when you be in a place long enough, they inspire you, and I think Berlin is an amazing place for an artist. Yes.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, by the way, you can see the books. Actually, I did it with the first show I have it, and for this occasion, I think it's amazing to bring to photography here, and it's free, so you can take it home if you want, and you can, if you enjoy, to read the text. And so that's only in the opening, and then later you have to buy.
So my question for you, Carla, is, I had the pleasure to already see, I'm right here. I was the one to give you the whiskey sour.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to already stand in your artwork and experience this immersive experience. And I have to say that, I try to follow my emotional response to the artwork, and it felt like very, in a way, intimidating, because it feels like, standing at the beach in front of a huge ocean, or standing in the middle of the desert, and you feel like you're so small compared to the force that you're confronted with. And what I would like to know is if you think of that emotional response of the audience when you create this artwork, if that's something that you want to create a very specific response, or is it something that just relates to you and your expression, and you basically leave it for everyone to have their own response and you don't even think about it?
No, I actually didn't really think too much about how people reacted. That pieces, it definitely come from my fear of nature. If I can be, talking more, story of me, like, I remember once I was in Russia for Earth Art Festival. They asked me to do an art piece in a forest with no people, no concrete. And then I see this anthole, I never have a breakdown, and I feel like this is so alien feeling. It's so uneasy, it's too big, like, there's just emptiness. Like, I feel personally very not well at that time, I couldn't really control myself, and I think, okay, how come like just being in nature can give me that feeling? So for me, the uneasiness is definitely probably something I also convey in the work, because for me, nature is not like, beautiful and landscape. That's not nature. It has much broader meaning of space and how you understand surrounding. For me, that's nature. And I think that is what I try to convey of a moment that I feel internally, and whatever that come out is really up to the audience. And it's not because, I'm dark, so they look very dark, but definitely there's something called uneasiness, or something I want to recover to ease myself that have there. But honestly, when you do a lot of artwork, you didn't really think that much. Like, no artist think through all the way, and I think that's the fun part of doing art. But indeed, I'm always very excited to hear what people told me. People say, oh, there's so many faces, and I think that's the interesting part, that you give the space for the contemplation, and people give you different answer.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the talk and the exhibition as well. I was wondering about the design of your works, because they're mostly monochromatic, and I was wondering if there's a significant meaning to especially the color black that you seem to be using quite a lot.
Yeah, I want to say it's because of Berlin, because everyone dressed black here, right? But no, I mean, when I was in Sweden, everything is black and white. And I remember I tried to do a show to call, what if the world is just black and white? It's not because you lost your sight, it's because, it's only ashes or snow, or like thin colors got absent. And that's kind of sounds sad, but then at the same time, I feel like when you take out colors, something absent, you're actually more focusing the spatial experience and movement. And I think that was an essential thing in the work. And because if you take out the green, you just don't relate the mountain so much. So that time, that's why I think, it's about the move. It's about the experience. That's why, for me, the color was not really a thought inside, and then it's been kept evolving, and then now I do some art where it's pink, and then people ask me why it's pink, and then I say it sell well. No, but sometimes it come to you, but the color choice in that particular work is really because for me is focusing more about the movement, and I think that's really important for the work.
Are there any other questions?
Let's party.
Almost.
Yes? Oh, perfect. I was just curious because when we were listening to Omar speak on the stage a second ago, he said, if I can ask you one favor, and he was telling us how to kind of look at the exhibition. Do you have a similar statement for us?
Yes, for this exhibition, I would recommend that you lie down on the Fat Boy. So you have a better angle to be immersed by yourself. And I think, yes, you should take time and think, for me, what's fascinating about what technology bring you, because it was actually a very difficult setup work that make you to as seamless possible that you actually don't feel the space, and you can actually kind of feel body weightless, and so try to be body weightless in the space, and then you can actually get the most out of it.
Is there anyone else?
Okay, maybe I can ask last question. Having in mind all these environment considerations and question about the nature, are you thinking or how you're considering a legacy, your legacy as an artist in your work?
Yes, I always think about legacy. I mean, as an artist, you cannot really think about your own legacy because legacy someone gave it to you. But I just found it's interesting to be an artist. Somehow you have this platform or time that people can kind of listen to you and give your perspective. And I think I'm the one trying to always push a boundary of mediums. And I hope that experimental phase experience is inspiring people at one point and maybe look back. You know, I know NFT like and Bitcoin like quite a long time ago, and then it got rushed and people started understanding it. I will not say like I do very front. I'm just saying that I'm very interested in something in the future, and I hope one day, you know, when people think back, okay, well, I do this like 10 years ago. Okay, that is her fault, and that inspired her. I mean that for me, that's the fun part of you know doing art, and for me it's about, you know, you be relevant of doing something that inspire people. But of course, like, you know, I hope, you know, that state, you know, for me, yeah, that, you know, now we are in hyper-contemporary time. I remember the journalist told me, no, you are not contemporary artist, you're a hyper-contemporary artist. I think that sounds so cool. I want to be a hyper-contemporary artist, you know, which means that
you are.
after, like, there is a phase, highly technology, or we're still defining this now. And then I think, okay, then it's a mission to do something. Everyone say, this is not art, you know, NFT is not art. You know, this bullshit. And I like people say this is not art. Then you are actually provoking, okay, what is art? Because back to a time when photograph is not really a medium, no one thinks photograph is art, you know. So, and I'm excited to be part of the artists who create something that, you know, uncertain or unseen, and or try to do something like that. And for me, that's exciting. And I hope that give me one day legacy stamp.
Thank you very, very much. That was a truly interesting conversation with you.
Yeah. Thank you for all your time. And although I sound rushed, but actually I really enjoy. But I also sometimes I feel like, oh, you know, yeah, people maybe don't want to hear me too much. And but again, just want to say thank you for you guys' time and being here and enjoy the work, because it's a very important step for me to be in Berlin, living there for quite years and doing a show here. And I do feel very related to, you know, Berlin giving me the time to do that, and the team actually do so amazing. I mean, they do the whole exhibition in 2 days. I actually shocked, but you know, it's their power and their willingness to make the art good, and yeah. So just have fun. I think that's the key.
Thank you, Carla. I think that's it.